Welcome to our EST series, our Employability Skills Training series. The purpose of this series is to equip prospective job seekers with skills, knowledge, and tools to position themselves better for good employment opportunities, indeed decent work, and work that is fulfilling for them, and that they can feel that they are actually, accomplishing that which they believe they were created for, or they are positioned for. As promised in the last episode, we will be looking at entrepreneurship today, and of course, there are many things that we can talk about entrepreneurship. Possibly this will turn out to be a series that will be in many episodes. So today I would want to broadly look at 4 issues. 1, what is entrepreneurship? Secondly, who can and is an entrepreneur? Thirdly, what would be some key issues to note for you to be successful as an entrepreneur? And finally, I'll cover 2 or 3 questions related to entrepreneurship in terms of some of the frequently asked questions in entrepreneurship or regarding entrepreneurship. So the first thing is, what is entrepreneurship? Certainly what I am going to define it as may not be found on or in academic books, but for me, entrepreneurship is about being able to identify problems in the world that we live in, problems that are pressing. That could be perhaps a problem related to people moving from one place to the other, payments. If you think about something like mobile money and what that offers, it could also be something as simple as you are in a college situation and you discover that students travel or have to move to a very far place to photocopy some of the things they need to photocopy for their studies, or they move very far to get a decent meal whenever someone wants to eat something that is different from what is offered on campus. Or it could be that they require a particular service, so already that's a problem and that is not readily available. But then the second bit about entrepreneurship is that you've got to be solutions oriented. Are you able to come up with how can you solve this problem that the people that you're thinking about are facing, or the world you're living in? The world, not just the geographical world, but also it could be the space, the context, the environment in which you find yourself. Finally, a big component of entrepreneurship, when you combine these two, the problem and the solution, you've got to ask yourself, how commercially viable is the solution that you are thinking about? Is it something that ultimately will make sense? The convergence of those 3 items would make an opportunity for entrepreneurship. And indeed, that kind of a mind that is able to pick up a problem and come up with a solution that is commercially viable, and I'm using commercial as the bigger overarching consideration, but of course we have many other considerations that could be around the ethical considerations, that you have to be solving the problem ethically in a way that is not harmful to others. It's got to be fulfilling for you. The convergence of all those considerations then make for a great opportunity for entrepreneurship. The mind that is able to think around those then is what we would consider an entrepreneurial mind. And therefore, it means that anyone who has this kind of an attitude, a can-do attitude, an attitude that is able to tease out the problems, the grit to stay the course, because entrepreneurship certainly is not for the faint-hearted. There will be times when it seems like everything is not working. There will be discouraging moments. But a person that is able to stay the course and not get dissuaded one who has a good sense to know what can be viable from a commercial standpoint, from an economic and business sense, that person can become an entrepreneur and is indeed an entrepreneur, because I believe that you can be an employee but an entrepreneur. You can be an employee but an entrepreneur. You think about problems within your workplace, you come up with solutions to those problems, and are also driven towards thinking about how viable, how commercially sustainable and viable and feasible is a particular solution. Of course, you can imagine an employee who will come and recommend something that is great but probably cannot be sustainable. That may not be entrepreneurial enough. But when you come up with solutions, you've thought through them, you are thinking and putting yourself in the shoes of the owner of the business. That's already entrepreneurship, already at work, even in an employment context. And remember, if you can be prudent, faithful, and motivated to grow someone else's, how much more would you be driven and motivated as well as faithful to grow your own? So really, when this attitude and this disposition is at play, and you have the capacity to make those kind of decisions as if you own, even if at the beginning you may actually not be owning, it already shows strong indications that you are an entrepreneur. And therefore, because this EST series, the Employability Skills Training, are fashioned towards those that are looking for employment opportunities, and many times those will be fresh graduates or other people that are transitioning from one form of employment to another, I would definitely encourage you that if you find yourself having that kind of a disposition, you think about how efficient you can get at your workplace, how things can be done more efficiently at a cost-effective on a cost-effective basis, then this could be early indications and signs that you are already enterprising. You are an entrepreneur. So, what are some of the key issues that you should note for you to be a successful entrepreneur? One, I would say that your motivation to solve problems must be overarching. It must exceed your obsession with the money aspect. Many people want a quick deal, something that a quick kill. They want to make money quickly. That's not. I don't think that's a great sign of entrepreneurship. Probably you are in for the money, but not for the mission. I think the mission and the goal to solve a problem is what is sustainable. And this is what will keep you for the long haul. You may not be in it for the long haul if it's all about money. And I say so because sometimes some enterprises will take long before they are even able to, make money, perhaps even break even. But you can already tell that you have a case. Your business has a case and has a path to growth. You can see that you are sort of laying a brick after the other. Therefore, the motivation, the overarching motivation, in as much as many people may not agree with me, would be the fact that you are actually solving a problem. So long as you're solving a problem, you are motivated to create those solutions, and you have a pathway as to how that business can and will grow and become sustainable, then I would think you have a good chance at entrepreneurship. You are an entrepreneur. And I say so because in our day and time, we have those kind of enterprises that we call social enterprises. They don't necessarily exist to make money, but of course, it's not sustainable to depend on donations. So they have to have a capacity to sustain themselves, even if not make profits. And even if they would make profits, those profits are channeled back, are plowed back to continue growing the business, coming up with new ideas, and testing out and researching and developing and improving the products and the services that they are offering. Those are also entrepreneurs, in as much as their overarching goal is not necessarily to make profits. Number two, a key consideration is that you must determine that you are in this for the long haul. This is so important. You've got to determine that you are in the enterprise that you've made up your mind to get into for the long haul. Why do I say so? It's because if you are in it for convenience sake, you will not live long enough within that enterprise to see the whole cycle of the business. Business is in cycles. Products have a life cycle. You can imagine, for example, in our context here in Kenya, if you start a business, let's say, which is allied to the school calendar. If you start a business and your clientele has a relationship or is related to the school calendar, then you may conclude that this is not viable because perhaps maybe your timing was not right, and so you began at a time when schools are out of session. And then even with a school calendar, there are different aspects of schools. Perhaps a time when students are out for more excursions than other times. Sometimes maybe students are more, closed in because of the exam seasons than other times. And that could have an impact on the enterprise that you're running. And so you could easily conclude that perhaps things will always be good as they are, only for you to realize that if you stayed longer for perhaps a whole school year, 3 terms or 2 semesters, you would discover that the business has got cycles. And other businesses have cycles that run beyond a year or even 2. Again, taking the context of here in Kenya, like the business I run, we've been able to survive 2 elections, the general elections. The 2017 elections and the 2022 elections. We've also been able to survive the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, and we are now heading to another election cycle in 2027. We already know something about what is the interplay between our enterprise and elections. And so because we determined that we are in this for the long haul, and we've already seen a trajectory of growth, we already have a solution to the world that we are living in some way, the audience, the target market that we focus on, then we can survive the low times because we know there will be better times, and we indeed put in measures to mitigate against the negatives or the challenges around the low times. We know how to, we've created mechanisms in which we know how to survive those times that may not be as high for the business, while also exploiting those times that are high for our business. So that is very important. When you determine to be there for the long haul, you will not be dissuaded by temporal situations. Temporal situations will not make you end up taking permanent decisions. Closely related to the first point about the overarching motivation is the reality that resources flow where there are relationships, and that is so critical. So in every enterprise, relationships management and building is so important. Sometimes you do it not because there is any money coming in. Sometimes you go to volunteer your skills. Sometimes you go to volunteer your talents. Sometimes you go to volunteer aspects of the enterprise that you're running as a way to create a relationship. I am not necessarily vouching for free services, but I'm saying sometimes you go over and beyond the call of duty to satisfy a customer, a prospective customer, to try and build a case for why they should give you the first, the second, and subsequent business. This way you are building a relationship. And those relationships always work for almost every business. I'm reminded of a statement that is attributed to Chinese entrepreneurs that talk to people and build your business. Talk to people. TTP equals BYB. Talking to people equals building your business. So you've got to get out there and build relationships. And of course, there is no relationship that doesn't need the investment of time. So sometimes you have to give people time, go out there and listen to customers, meet people, talk to them, get on the phone, get onto online meetings and talk to people, and that way you will ultimately build business. In fact, word of mouth is an incredibly great strategy for almost every business. When you build relationships, it is these people and these organizations that you're relating with that will eventually pass out a kind word for you out there, and that could mean a business that may not have been advertised. In fact, our observation is that most of the business opportunities are not advertised unless you're talking about public procurement, government kind of businesses that will have to be publicly advertised out there. For most of the businesses in the private sector, they will not be publicly advertised. And even when sometimes they are publicly advertised, truth be told, that some of those, if you already have a relationship that exists, you'll have an upper hand in the procurement or in the selling and buying process. Finally, for the consideration, and this list is not exhaustive, I'll be covering some of these things in greater detail in subsequent episodes, is you need to seek out like-minded persons that can mentor and encourage and handhold you on the journey of entrepreneurship. Most probably someone has been in the situation you are in. They've made mistakes, they probably have had successes, and hearing them out, working with them, allowing them into your enterprise, speaking with them, consulting them could help you get a word or some counsel that could save you pain, that could save you loss, or could even accelerate you. Rather than you having to make repeated mistakes that others have made, you can always be out there to make original mistakes that probably nobody within your circle has made. So it helps a lot to have a friend, a business associate, or a partner that you're working with, not necessarily within your business, but probably out there that has gone ahead of you and can give you some advice. Ultimately, you make the decisions, but advice in many cases will help. Indeed, it is true that in the multitude of counsel, there is safety. Now, as I come to a close, I want to talk about a few commonly asked questions, particularly by fresh graduates, people that are leaving school, or people that are just beginning in the pursuit of employment or jobs. One, must I first be employed before I venture into self-employment, or, for lack of a better word, entrepreneurship? The answer for this question is that it depends. Of course, there are those who have the benefit of coming from very entrepreneurial backgrounds. Probably you've been involved in running a business for your father, mother, friend, or family, or through your time in school, you are in one way or the other involved in running a business. You may have some critical skills, you may have some critical exposure that advantages you to jump in full throttle into business right from school. And I have friends that have never been formally employed. They've always been running their own enterprise. And some of them are a success, others may have not done so well. They may have learned a few ways that do not work. So depending on how your situation is, and I'll probably mention one other thing. Let's say you also are trying, you do not have the capital, you do not have the money to begin your business. Sometimes by starting in employment, where you are formally employed, where you are involved in someone else's business or the government's business, it could give you a head start, as many people want to begin with millions and they're not ready to grow organically. So of course, certainly if you've not managed 1 million shillings before, it would be probably such a huge risk to bite for you to want to begin a business with 1 million shillings. And so, again, the proportion of the kind of capital that you're looking for is always something that is important to consider, so that you don't want to risk with 1 million shillings when you can easily begin with 10,000, 20,000 or 50,000. The last thing I wanted to speak about in this episode is to address the question of what's a good business, and basically connected to the first point that I brought up concerning the definition of entrepreneurship. A good business would require the convergence of 3 items, at least 3. One, the fact that it's solving a problem that you've observed as an entrepreneur or a potential entrepreneur. And number 2, that the business is, you have been able to identify a solution. So connected to the problem is the solution. The third item, which I alluded to earlier on, is the fact that the solution can be applied in a manner that is commercially viable. I'll be talking in a later episode about other aspects of a good business. And one of those that I'll be speaking into a little bit into detail will be that it needs to be scalable, meaning that you can begin from a certain level and keep on growing as your market evolves, your product becomes adapted and adjusted to meet the customer needs, and indeed that you can probably scale it into new markets and scale into new products, all those aspects of scalability. We'll be speaking into this into a little more detail in episodes later. So basically that is it. And of course, I cannot forget to mention that a good business should not be harmful. It should be something that is sustainable from a moral and ethical standpoint. We are one organization whose vision is to ensure that we have efficient, effective, and ethically grounded enterprises and institutions for a transformed Africa. That is our vision. And so we are big in terms of insisting on, the fact that businesses should be ethical, doing good indeed is good, and not just being good, but really looking at being good and ethics as the minimum. You should aim for even higher. As a business, you should aim to be generous, look out for the interests of other people, even way beyond your own or those of your organization. And ultimately, over the last 10 years, we've proven that this is not only helpful to the society and the community that you are seeking to serve, but ultimately it comes back to you in form of growth, in form of stable relationships, in form of favors, I would say, getting opportunities that in and of yourself, you are as an organization, you would not have got, were it not for the fact that you've been able to establish those relationships through going out of your way to seek out for the interests of the clients that you're serving above your own. That may be questionable and contestable to many organizations and businesses in this capitalistic world, but I think the proof of the pudding is in the eating. For the last 10 years, that has been our mainstay. And so we would encourage potential and existing entrepreneurs to really go out of their way to entrench that generosity, to entrench that sacrificial approach and perspective towards doing business, because ultimately that while you may not do it for what is in it for you, but literally you cannot go wrong by going out of your way to exceed the expectations of the clients. So that marks the end of this episode. We look forward to your comments. You can get in touch with us through our social platforms that are shown on your screen. You could even write to us through info@jeypent.com, and we will do our best to respond to you. Actually, feel free to send us feedback about other topics that you'd like us to cover, questions that you'd like us to address in depth, and we will be glad to address those in next and subsequent episodes. Otherwise, we look forward to continued engagements, and we wish you all the best. Thank you very much, and bye for now.